This coming NBA season is a make or break one for Paul George. What he does next is going to define the remainder of his career. He could either bounce back and go on a high note, or finish his career in disappointing fashion, and perhaps hurt his legacy in the process. All eyes are on Paul George this year. Can he bounce back, or will it be more of the same from him? You see, last year he joined the Philadelphia 76ers, and on paper they had a very, very threatening big three. If these guys were healthy, and that is a big ask, but if they were healthy, they looked like they could be one of the top teams at least. You had Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George. That is a very talented big three, and you've got it spread out as well. You've got Maxey at the guard spot, Paul George as a forward, and Joel Embiid as a center, so you don't really have any holes, as opposed to, say, a star-studded backcourt duo and nothing else, or a point guard and a center. You had every slot filled in pretty nicely. So on paper, it worked very, very well, but there's a reason the game is played. And when Paul George actually stepped onto that court, it didn't look too pretty. And he had the worst season that he has had in a long, long time. And it was pretty surprising. At least for me, it seemed like a pretty drastic drop off. It wasn't just a steady decline going from the Clippers to Philly. It seemed like this wasn't the same guy. And part of that was likely due to injuries. He was very limited in his playing time this past year, but it was not a season that left Paul George in high standing among very many NBA fans. And at this point in Paul George's career, that is not a good spot to be in because you see, when you're a young player and you're developing, teams are okay with you having, say, a sophomore slump because they have time, they have patience with you to still be able to get through these road bumps and come back the other side all the better for it, learning from your mistakes and just only improving and getting better. But Paul George, he doesn't have that luxury of being a young, developing player. He is, at this point, a finished product. What you see is what you get, and what we saw last year wasn't too pretty from him. It was the worst season we've seen from him in a long, long time. And to get a season like this, you got to go all the way back to when he was very, very young and developing. He's not getting any better. He's not going to be that MVP once again, but you do hope that he is better than last year. But is that possible? Can Paul George bounce back? Just be an all-star level guy to make Philly not regret entirely their acquisition of Paul George. To give them any semblance of hope. Is that possible for PG? And the answer lies in the mindset of Paul George. If he puts his mind to it. If he does. If he focuses and locks in and wants to be an all-star again, I fully believe that he is capable. If Paul George wants to be an all-star, I believe without a shadow of a doubt he can be an all-star. But that's if he wants to. Because if he doesn't, if he's content just kind of playing these last couple years of his career on cruise control, he's just coasting by, still making plenty of money, still getting sponsorships, he's a big, big name, and still playing the game he loves, if that's the mindset he goes with, I don't think he will ever get back to all-star level again. It's all in the mindset of PG. Because here's the thing about him. It wasn't long ago that Brandon Miller made headlines by calling Paul George the GOAT, the best to ever play. And here's the thing about that. That was largely based on his talent because when it comes to two-way players or the modern NBA wing, there is nobody better, nobody with a better skill set, nobody that defines the archetype better than Paul George. He is excellent on both ends of the court and a dynamic offensive weapon. When it comes to talent, there are not many guys that can outmatch Paul George. But talent is only part of the finished package. You've got to put that together with the right mindset, with the confidence as well as drive to continually try to get better, to compete night in, night out. And that is where the answer lies for Paul George. He has all the talent in the world. He is one of the most talented players that we've ever seen, one of the most influential players in the past decade for the way that his skill set is perfect for the modern game. But it's a matter of if he wants to apply himself this year. That will determine if Paul George is able to make a comeback or if he's going to fall flat. Let's look at some guys in recent years that had a mindset that took them to the next level. Look at Jimmy Butler. Look at Tyrese Halliburton. The way that these guys were regarded as perhaps overrated. Or maybe they were just simply overlooked. Nobody really talked about them as superstars of the league? Will they have that drive them so they could be motivated to push themselves even further and become undeniable, to make you talk about them because of their play, because of their success? Mindset took them there. They combined the talent that they had and the mindset they had to create a total package. And it brought both these guys to the NBA Finals at various points. But with Paul George, he's got to have that mindset moving forward. He has all the talent in the world, but it's his mindset. And I don't want to be one to doubt that, right? When Paul George had this season last year, which disappointed a lot of people, and rightfully so, a lot of people pointed to, they made jokes about how Paul George is more focused on his podcast than he is at actually playing the game of basketball. Just kind of ridiculing his mindset, where his head's at. But what I've seen from Paul George is that he has moments where he can be a great leader. Look at him back when he was in Indiana. Look at him when he was a top 3 MVP candidate back in Oklahoma City. But then there's also times where he either seems checked out, or he seems a little bit arrogant, like he's perceiving himself or the team to be better than they are. Look at when the Clippers blew that 3-1 lead in shocking fashion in the playoffs. In the way that up until they lost in Game 7, Paul George kept saying they were in the driver's seat because they were up 3-1, so they just got to get one more, and then the job will be done. But they weren't in that driver's seat because they did not see that comeback happening. They didn't prepare for it, and that's what I'm worried about with Paul George. I want to know where his mindset is, because that is going to be the key to unlocking him and bringing him back to even being an all-star again. So, with all that being said, if it's about the mentality, where is PG's mentality right now? Well, I think, and maybe this is very much so wishful thinking, I hope at the very least that it's better than what we've seen from him in the last few years, because now he hasn't really earned that confidence, that arrogance anymore, because of moments like that bone lead, because of moments like continual disappointment in LA, and now this disappointment in Philly. He's not on top of the world anymore. And so with that, he's got to find his way back up to the top as opposed to already being there. And so when that happens, that's going to motivate you. Because PG, he doesn't have to go out of his way to find motivation. It's right there. It's staring him in the face. It's every fan of the NBA telling him that he doesn't have it anymore. It's the 76ers telling him that maybe they've got some question marks about him. It's everybody in the NBA media sphere doubting him. He hasn't felt that way in a long time, or at least he's had something to back it up. Even when people questioned him with the Clippers, they questioned him for some of his postseason performances. There was always the fact that he was still putting up good numbers. He was still a great two-way player, but last year, we didn't really see that as much. He doesn't have that to back him up. He doesn't have that in his comfort zone. But life is found at the edge of your comfort zone, so maybe Paul George is going to be hungry. Once again, we're going to see a hungry Paul George, the likes of which we have not seen since the Thunder days. I think we could see that. And if that's the case, he could bounce back this year. That is a very big if. But he's in the NBA for a reason. He has had the talent. He has had the mentality before. He's got to get back there, though. The talent is waiting for him, but the mindset has to be there to take the opportunity, to take that chance, and run with it. So, will Paul George bounce back this season? The answer to that is entirely up to him. But no matter what happens, this is a defining season in the career of Paul George. He can either go out in these twilight years of his career in a blaze of glory, proving himself to be a winning player once again, and the guy that Brandon Miller called so influential, the greatest. Or he can go out in the fire of disappointment, and that is all up to him. After the shock of this past season, he may not be in the driver's seat, but it's time for Paul George to take the wheel once again and decide the road the rest of his career will go down.